It's a roller coaster. I love that side of it because it is the most exciting bit. Like, it's got the biggest highs and the biggest lows, and it's all over the place. But it's rewarding. It's very rewarding.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Well, it's not that often that you get to sit in a brand new restaurant to do a podcast, but here we are. Aiden Stevens from the Bentley Group. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, good. The last couple of weeks have been sort of fairly intense, but exciting at the same time. You know, with 11 Barrack is now 5 weeks in.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's coming together. We're a little bit further ahead as far as systems and procedures go and the quality of the product than what I thought we would be at this stage, which is positive. And you sort of hope after opening a few, you kind of start to get a little bit better at it, but it's never a given.
Well, you've been a real integral part of that, and since COVID, the Bentley Group has opened a number of restaurants. What's it been like for you opening very different restaurants as well during this period?
It's been, look, it's definitely challenging, and that's part of the reason why I've been with the group as long as I have, because every time we open a restaurant, the concept is always quite different. It's not just a carbon copy of the previous one and moving it into a different location and opening up in a different city. So that's been, like I said, it's challenging, but it's very exciting at the same time. So, you know, with opening King Clarence, that was well and truly out of our wheelhouse. But also, you know, we sort of saw a gap in the market, and we thought, you know, we could possibly do something good here. And, you know, with getting Khan on board, it's all sort of lined up quite well. So that opening itself was quite challenging in that the build was very much delayed, so we rolled into it without any soft openings.
Wow.
And we opened 10th of December, and it was a Friday lunch, and we had 100 booked. So it was about as last minute as you can get. We had tradesmen in there at 5 to 12, still screwing things in. They were there every day for the first 2 weeks, every morning up until midday, still doing finishing touches on it. So it was wild. Exciting but wild. And then this one has been sort of almost a little bit on the other end of the scale. We've had a good lead time. We've had a lot of time to kind of get things right. We had a couple of soft openings. We've done an event for the Pillars Group above us. So by the time we actually got to opening, the wheels have been greased. We've started to find a rhythm. So that's been good. That's been good.
Tell us a little bit about 11 Barrack, what you're doing here.
So we've opened up a seafood and steak grill. I know there's a fair few grills opening up around the city at the moment, but there seems to be a real appetite for it. And I feel like we've sort of set out to open something that is, a seafood and steak grill, but also more than just the sum of its parts. We've got a beautiful room here, vaulted ceilings, huge columns. We've got a beautiful Moroni cooking suite in there that we inherited from Seta, and that's the grill is the centerpiece of that. So we looked at that. All right, well, that, it kind of makes sense to focus the whole menu around that, especially being in the middle of the CBD as well. Yeah. And then on the back of Cirrus closing last year, that was challenging for us, because we knew we had a good product down there.
Yep.
It had a good following, and the restaurant hadn't run its course yet. It's just got to the point where, rent was astronomical, and it just didn't really make any financial sense to sort of sign on for another lease and keep going down that path.
Yeah, totally.
So we thought bringing some elements of that into this and highlighting sort of a lot of that sort of seafood technique that we were using down there in this space, and then also using a lot of premium meat. So we've got a good mix, and I think it's been really well received so far. There's a mixture of like quite classic and luxurious items on the menu, but there's also, we want this to be very approachable, like not pretentious in any way. You can pop in, have a burger and a beer at the bar any day, any time. We're open 7 days a week. But then if you want to come and you want to, have a long lunch and throw down on some amazing bottles of wine and share a Chateaubriand, like there's that avenue for you as well. So
amazing.
We just wanted it to be something that appeals to a broad market, because it's not a small restaurant. We at the end of the day, we want to fill it day in, day out. So that's kind of been the drive for this. We wanted a really approachable luxury venue that didn't feel like there was, when you sometimes sort of go into a restaurant, you kind of feel like, I've got to be on my best behaviour here. We didn't want any of that. We just wanted it to be really relaxed.
Nick Hildebrandt and Brent Savage, a dynamic duo. Lots of restaurants now, institutions almost in this city.
It's getting to that point.
It is. But you've been with the group for a long time and really integral in the sense of their growth as well. Tell us about your role within the group and what it's like to work with Brent.
It's interesting because no, Brent's great. No, Brent's great. Like we get along really well. Like we've sort of transitioned past, I think, that employer-employee kind of relationship. Yeah. We still try to keep things professional. There's moments where I'm definitely an employee, but there's moments where we're very sort of candid as well. Yeah. But I get along with him really well and with Nick. But the role has grown so organically. Like when I started there, Bentley was a little standalone restaurant on Crown Street. There was Brent and Nick were there full time. Nick was on the floor every service, running the wine program. Brent was the head chef in the kitchen. I come aboard as the sous chef. It was a tiny kitchen. Like you knew the place quite well. Like it was small. There was a handful of full-time employees, and everybody that worked there did every shift. You were there 5 days a week, and it was open lunch, dinner. It didn't close until no one was coming through the door. So you might still be cooking at midnight, but it was very tight knit and quite small. And then fast forward, a little over a decade, and Bentley Group's got 6 venues now. Employs about 150 people. It's just grown so much, and so my role with that has been a little bit of, creative. There's been a lot of creative involvement in that. There's been every venue that opens up sort of be very, very involved in that, from the ideation all the way through the menu development, through to opening, and then the first couple of months of it being open, getting it up and running. We always have a head chef in place. So that process has been very good, and the role has been that's probably the most exciting part of it for me, the new restaurant openings. But yeah, so it's been very collaborative. Like the guys, I work well with them. When I first did a trial there years ago, like it just clicked instantly. And I think I started there at the right time for me as well. I think if I'd started maybe a year earlier or a year later, I might have only done a year or 18 months there. But I sort of just started as Bentley itself had settled, and it was very, it was running and it was good and it had some accolades, but they were starting to look at the growth, and they were starting looking at opening Monopole, and then Yellow followed, and then Bentley moved into the CBD, and then Cirrus opened up, and so I just sort of started at the right time, and it's just kept me engaged the whole way through.
Yeah, I know you've had a long career with them and been really important with all those elements, but why did you get into cooking in the first place? Tell us about that period of time in your life.
Well, funnily enough, it was never part of my plan. When I finished high school, I'm from South Africa originally, so I finished high school, and then I was going to go and do a gap year, travel to the UK like almost every single South African does, and that was meant to be a year, and then I was going to go back and study marine biology. So that was the goal. It was completely different. I didn't come from a household that was really focused on food. It wasn't a rich food history with us. It was meat and 2 veg. Everything cooked on the fire outside, so it was all very simple. It wasn't food was sustenance for me. It wasn't a thing. I don't think I'd seen coriander until I was about 18 years old. So, but then I went to the UK and started work as a kitchen hand. Yeah, just holiday job, backpacking. Spent some time in Edinburgh, and then worked my way down to southwest England, and ended up cooking, at a few places, and I just got hooked, and I thought, what, let's just make a career out of this. And that's how it ended up. I never went back.
With the group now, having 6 restaurants, do you take pork, for example, across the group and share an animal, or how do you work with the different venues? Are they independent with their selections?
Yeah, they are. They tend to run their own restaurant. Obviously, there's the group over and above all of them, but they are sort of set up to be self-sustaining. So we try to keep the same supply lines. We all obviously, like Brent and myself, we have our favourite producers, and growers, and generally those will be featured across all the menus. So we don't get any whole beasts in and have like a commissary kitchen or an off-site facility where we kind of process that and then divvy it out. Like we're not sort of there yet.
Yeah.
It is something that we are looking at potentially if we grow further. Maybe that becomes, it might almost be something we have to do. You know, it might be, you know, we might get a lot of benefit out of it. At the moment, they all sort of operate independently.
You oversee all the restaurants in a way.
Yes.
How does pork weave through the menus of the different restaurants? Like, are there sort of any dishes that stand out that you can tell us about and how it sort of works?
It's sort of, you know, there's ebbs and flows. Like obviously, you know, yellow tends not to anything.
Not many vegetarian restaurants.
No, not at all. Funnily enough, though, there's Luke Powell's pork and pecorino sausages has transitioned my missus from being vegetarian to occasional pork eater.
Understandable.
Yeah. They are probably one of my favourite sausages in the world. Like, but no, so at the moment, we've got the pork tomahawk over here, the Kurabuta, which is an amazing product. Like we're getting that from Vix, and they're dry aging it for us. And
right.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like it's, you know, we're getting up to 21 days on it. It's around 650 grams, and then we're cooking it all the way over the fire, sort of nice, long and slow. Takes about half an hour, 35 minutes from go to be done.
Wow.
Yeah. So no, it's good, and it glazed up there. So that's a beautiful product. And then over at King Clarence, you know, we're using pork bellies for the psalm. We've got pork and prawn dumplings on there. It's featured. It sort of goes through roundabouts. You know, we've used pork gel quite a lot at Bentley, you know, years ago. Like, well, I think we flogged it. We had it on for like 2 years straight. But there's not like a set amount that we'll go. It's like, you know, whenever a menu's changing and there's an ingredient that looks like it needs to have some pork with it, then we'll do that.
Tell us a little bit about that dry aging. What, you know, with the tomahawk that's here.
Yep.
What's the purpose of it? What does it do to it? How does it affect the eating at the end as well?
Well, I mean, the dry aging process, you know, it'll improve your flavour on it. It'll, because you're losing some of that water weight as it dry ages, you know, and if you get that balance right of the right amount of moisture sort of coming out of it, the right amount of water, that intensifies that, you know, beautiful flavour, you know, especially with the Kurabuta, you know, they're fed on like mostly macadamia and sorghum and barley, so they get that beautiful nuttiness and quite sweet and sort of a long pronounced flavour. So you can intensify that by dry aging it. And then also as you dry age, the enzymes in the meat will start to break down the sort of connective tissue a little bit, and you end up with a more tender product. So that for us, you know, that becomes the difference between a decent piece of pork and an amazing piece of pork. You know, it really is that simple. Like you do need to give a little bit of age to it.
Tell us a little bit about that dish, the condiments that come with it, or, you know, the process.
Yep.
Take us through that.
It's super simple. Like it's super simple because it's such a good product. Like we do very little to it on the plate. You know, we brine it. It gets dry aged for the 21 days. Then we brine it for about 2 to 3 hours, pat it dry, and then we sit it back in our cooler for at least 2 days because it's a wet brine. 2 days to kind of let that skin sort of the fat and the meat dry out a little bit, so that when we cook it over the fire, you kind of get a nice crust on it. So when it comes to the cooking, you know, like I said, nice and slow over the fire, rendering some of that fat, and then as it's sort of getting to that final stage, when it's sort of around that deep sort of 50-degree mark, we start to glaze it with a plum glaze, and that plum glaze has a bit of mirin in there, rice wine vinegar, obviously plums, shio thyme, diced up bacon. So we're brushing it with that, and then that starts to caramelize. So that's like the last 2 to 3 minutes of its cooking. And then all we do is carve it off the bone, slice it, serve it with a plum jus, and split it with a nice olive oil. And that's it. Super simple.
Is it hard keeping things that simple? Like it sounds simple, but is it hard to do that as a chef and deliver that to a guest?
It's becoming less hard. You know, I think you sort of like when you start cooking, you feel like sometimes less is not more, and you feel like if you don't do more, it doesn't appear like you're making an effort.
Yeah.
And I think you just realise that at the end of the day, people just want really tasty food. You know, like no one really cares. Like you want really good food, you want good texture, good flavour, and you know, a product like that, that's all you need. That's all you need to do to it.
You mentioned different cuts of pork have appeared on the menus across the group. Is there a particular cut that you really like and a way that you like to cook it?
Yeah, I know I sort of just said that I went through that pork gel phase where I was like, wouldn't touch them again. But like, I'm back to thinking that's the best thing. It's amazing. Like if you treat it right and you cook it right, the texture is unreal. You know, and if you get the balance of fat to meat right, you know, like I like to sort of trim not all of the fat off, but sort of to the point where it's about 50-50 fat and meat. And then, you know, if you cook it for like 8 hours at 80 degrees in like a chicken stock, and then just like put it back in the oven and slowly heat it, like I think we do about 185. We glaze it with like one of my favorites is like apple brandy, maltose, thyme, a little bit of chicken stock, and just glaze it as it's warming up. It's just unbelievable. It's amazing.
I know different cooking techniques suit different cuts, but is there any sort of tips or tricks that you have in the kitchen that really work for pork?
I think the dry aging for me is one of the biggest ones. You know, like it doesn't have to be 21 days. Like it just, but it just needs at least a week on it. You know, so I think some things work really well, like long and slow. Like I think for me, the pork gel is a great thing for long and slow. You know, I think if you're using pork neck and you want to cook it over the grill fast, sometimes it can be really good as well. If you sort of like butterfly it out and get it real flat and marinate it in something nice and spicy, like if you're cooking at home, you know, and then grill it quick. That's beautiful. And then other ways we do that, the pork neck as well, is we might do brine it for like 6 hours and then cook it slow for 6, brush it in like a miso marinade and then smoke it and then finish it on the barbecue. You know, like that's it. So it all depends on what that end result wants to be, but it's super versatile. Like you can do it in so many different ways depending on that cut.
You've grown up in the Bentley Group. You know, you spent a long time in the group,
Yep.
but you've been really important to their growth as a real backbone of their growth. For young chefs out there that are looking to, you know, have an amazing career like you've had, what sort of advice would you have for a young chef?
Oh, I would say just devour every bit of cooking literature you can find. Like, just read. Like, no one else is responsible for your development. Like, it's just you. It's solely you. You know, like you can work at good places, you can find a good mentor which will take you to a point, but if you're not putting in that energy yourself and your days off and really sort of focusing on that and making it a goal of yours, you're going to sort of hit a plateau or hit a ceiling pretty quickly. So I'd say that's the biggest one. And cook a lot. Just cook at home. Cook whenever you can. Like, you know, I think one of the things that I see with young chefs, and I was guilty of it early on in their career as well, is you don't cook a lot at home and you cook other people's food. And that's fine to do that. But then as soon as you turn that on somebody and go, all right, you know what, next Friday, I want you to come up with a dish, any dish, whatever you want, do what you want. You see people start to falter because it's just not a part of their brain that they've engaged, like that creative side of it. And I think if you want to make a career out of cooking, like that is the most important step. Like you have to start working on that early. Otherwise, you'll get to that point and you'll be like, I don't know what to do. There's so many options, I don't know where to go.
You mentioned a bit earlier about you love taking on the new openings and the challenges of it and the thrill of it. But, you know, with all the workload leading up to it, how does it feel for you when you've created or been part of the team that's created something new and the doors open and people come in? What does that feel like for you, that sort of moment?
It's a roller coaster. It's an absolute roller coaster because you know you're going to fail at a few things. Like, you know there's going to be a few things that you thought were going to be great and it doesn't quite work out that way, or you've figured out the space and then you do a first service, you're like, I did not figure that space out at all. We've got to reset the whole thing. But so I love that side of it because it is the most exciting bit. Like, it's got the biggest highs and the biggest lows, and it's all over the place. But I think it's rewarding. It's very rewarding. You know, I think when you can get from that conversation you had in the room where you had a blank piece of paper and go, all right, so we've got a site, what are we doing? And then you go through the point and you've seen cutlery, crockery, decisions made, like curtains, chairs, tables, plateware. Before you even start to think about the dishes, the amount of work that goes into just opening the doors to the place, you know, getting gas and water set up, getting charcoal suppliers, you know, getting, all that sort of stuff. It takes a lot of work. And then when you finally open the doors, people come through and it feels seamless for them and it feels like it's been open for a while. that feeling is amazing. Like it's a high that it's hard to replicate.
The evolution of the group has been quite fascinating to watch. Always feels like they've opened something new at the moment, but something's around the corner. Is that the sense in the group? Do you think there's more
growth to come?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be silly to say they're not looking at opening more. They're always they're always entertaining opportunities, you know. So I'd be surprised if we don't open something else in the future. But right now, I think our main focus is solidifying what we've got and then getting 11 Barrack to a point where we're all sort of very, very happy with it. And we want this place to be a good restaurant for the next 10 years, 15 years. So we're really sort of putting a lot of energy into the longevity of this place. Before we sort of start to put any energy into something new.
Yeah. You're overseeing many different restaurants. What do you love about what you do?
I love that. I love the variety. I love the fact that I can step into, different kitchens and have a different experience at each of those and be dealing with different people and have different parameters for each venue, what's important at each of those venues. I like that I can also not have to be in the venue every single day prepping the same jobs over and over again. I can actually come in, do a service, have some fun, cook some good food, and then leave and go to another one. Like, it's good. It's like it's taken a long time to get to that point. I'm enjoying it.
Well, Aiden, it's been a long time coming, but an absolute pleasure to get you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I know it's taken a while.
We'll have to catch up again soon.
We'll do. Thanks.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.